So this is what your paper should look like from last week. You should have already drawn all of the elements of the dragon eye, including scales that go all the way off to the edge of the paper. And you should have gone back with a Sharpie or a black marker or a black crayon or a black colored pencil and traced over all of your pencil lines and then went over some of the lines a few times to make them a little bit wider. We were trying to include some variety in the width of the lines. So some of the lines are just thin and then some of them are thicker. So once you have this on your paper, you're ready to go ahead and color. There is a coloring technique that I want to teach you today, and the coloring technique is called color gradient. Okay, so before you start coloring your paper, I want you to get a piece of scrap paper and practice color gradient. So color gradient is when you have two colors that go together that can blend well, and they're gonna transition from one to the other. So try a couple of colors on your scrap paper and see if they look good, if they transition from one to the other. So if you start pressing down really hard to get like a dark blue, and then it gets a little bit lighter, and then it gets a little bit lighter, and then you start with your light blue and press down a little bit harder, and then get a little bit lighter, and then get a little bit lighter. That would be a color gradient because they're blending together. You're trying to transition from one color to the next color, and it has to be a color that's gonna look good together. So the light blue and the dark blue, they're looking pretty good together, and that looks even better when I did it that way. So maybe you want to try to blend them a little bit in the middle. Remember, blending is when the colors go together. So you kind of want to overlap the colors in the middle. Kind of like this better than I like this. So press down hard on your pencil, get a little bit lighter, and then right here in the middle, you want to put like an overlap of the color, and then get a little bit lighter. Yeah, that's a good transition, okay? So these two turned out really well. This one and this one, not so much. So you're gonna have to practice with it first. Now, those two colors go together well. I wanna show you what looks like when you try to do a color gradient with colors that don't go well together. Now, Mr. Smith and I both like green and orange, but when you're trying to do a color gradient, they don't really go that well together, because if you try to transition from a green to an orange, something just kind of looks a little bit off. It's doable, it doesn't look that bad, but you want to try to stick with colors that blend really well. So practice paper first, practice your color gradient, then go back to your dragon eye, and then that's when you can start coloring. I want you to use color gradient for the scales. This area in the center, the actual eyeball itself, you can color that however you want. But when you're coloring the scales, I want you to try to use color gradient. So this is how you would do it. One end of the scale is going to be darker, and then, like I said, it needs to get a little bit lighter as it fades or as it transitions into the second color. And you can do color gradient with more than two colors. I was just using two colors because it seems to be a little bit easier, but you could always try to do a third color, but that is going to take a little bit longer. So you don't have to do color gradient for every single scale, but you do have to show me that you understand what color gradient is in order to get the points for that on your grade. So you don't have to do color gradient for every single scale, because I know it's very time consuming, especially these little ones. it's gonna be difficult to do color gradient on such a small area. So you don't have to do color gradient on every single scale, but you do have to include it somewhere in order for you to get the points on your grade for that part of this assignment. You're also getting points for the thicker lines too. So make sure that you went back with your Sharpie and made some of the lines thicker. So you will be getting points for that as well. So this is what it should look like when you're done. You can use whatever colors you want. You don't have to use the same colors that I used. Like I said, you can color the inside here any color you want. You don't want to do a color gradient in the inside here, but it does look kind of cool if you take two different colors. So one color would be around the black part in the center, and then a second color for around the rest of the eyeball. I didn't use color gradient for these scales right here in the first row. I just colored them just plain dark blue. And I did the color gradient that I was working on here, and I did a different color gradient here. So this is dark blue that fades into light blue. This is purple that fades into light blue. And then I just did plain orange and plain red for the rest of the scales. So this is what it should look like. You should have your whole paper colored in, and then make sure that you take a picture and post it on Schoology so I can grade it.